Hello, everyone. Welcome to the You Gotta Be Bullshilling Me podcast. This is your host, Brian C. Schilling, live from Los Angeles, California. News of the day. A best man in a wedding was bleeding after being hit by a flying dildo. The No Pants subway ride has been canceled in 2021 due to COVID. And the COVID-19 cases are spinning out of control. So that being said, today is a very important show. On our show, we have a very special guest. He's hot, he's got the trot, and on our show, we drink Red Bull and smoke pot. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Brian Fletcher. Doc, how are you today?
Hi, how's it going? I'm doing great, actually.
Good.
The Moderna vaccine today, actually, right before the show.
Oh, that's amazing. First of all, I do want to tell you, Happy New Year, first of all. I hope 2021 brings you nothing but health, happiness, good fortune. And the bar's so low from 2020, and it can't get any worse. So I'm hoping that 2021 is a phenomenal year for everyone. Thank you again for taking the time today to be on our #1 podcast. It's a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So first off, Dr. Fletcher, I wanted to ask you, as a first responder ER physician, I personally want to thank you for what you do, especially this past year with COVID-19. You're most definitely a hero, but I'm curious to know, are you ever, quote unquote, scared to go to work in the ER at your hospital during this pandemic? Yes or no, and why?
Every day, every shift, there's at least some trepidation. If anyone who works in the emergency room or the ICU dealing with COVID patients tells you otherwise, they're fibbing. It's something that I signed up for and something we all do, and I'm proud to do it. I'm happy to do it. I would do it over and over again, and God forbid there's another pandemic, but I would happily give my services. But, especially in the beginning, we weren't exactly sure how it was transmitted, and in the ER, we see a biased sample. We don't often see the people who are doing well. We see the people who are dying. So there's a lot of death and destruction around us, and we wonder if we're going to bring it home to our partners, our family members. And in the beginning, we didn't even know if our pets could get it. We didn't know if it was on our shoes or gloves. Wow. A lot of people shave their beards because they thought it might have been in their hair follicles. So it's still scary. We know a lot more about it, but, there are plenty of nurses and doctors who caught it, technicians. They've mostly recovered. A couple that I know, there's one in the ICU, so it's very scary.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And that brings me to, what you had said about the scariness. And I wanted to ask you as an ER physician and a first responder, what are your beliefs about COVID-19 and how do you feel that our politicians have been handling this pandemic?
Well, my beliefs, I know that there are people who have different opinions, but my beliefs are in fact true. Sometimes people say it sounds condescending to say, but the truth is my knowledge about a subject is greater than your ignorance about it. Mm-hmm. Meaning I'm telling you the truth about COVID-19. I see it every day. I have no incentive to lie. And, the outgoing administration is shockingly incompetent, brutally dishonest, and doing a huge disservice. There's a reason why the most advanced country on the planet that should be taking care of this the best is actually doing the worst. And I mean the worst, worse than any other nation in the world. We have the highest per capita infection rate. Wow. 1 out of every 12 South Dakotans has COVID, and we have the highest death rate in the entire world. Wow. That's because, if I may get political, the current / outgoing administration does not care about the COVID pandemic. They just don't care. In the last 5 months, outgoing President Trump has not been to one COVID task force meeting. Make that 6 months as of January.
Wow. Yeah. And that's, it's interesting. I always, was thinking, how do the doctors and the nurses and that work in the hospital, how do they feel about it? And like you said, you can only speak the truth, and you actually have first hands-on experience with the COVID-19 virus and this pandemic. And just this morning when I was drinking my coffee and watching the news, I read also too online that a lot of that COVID-19 that the cases are rapidly rising and that the deaths are rising.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, when do you think that not only our country, but also our entire world will ever see the light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, most epidemiologists had predicted about another 1.5 to 2 years, and that's because of the statistical distribution. It's a complex topic, but at some point, like the 1918 pandemic or any other pandemic, it crests and then it decreases. But a couple of things that impacted, of course, are disbelief and people who just refuse to sort of acknowledge the seriousness of it. I found this very interesting. I was reading about the 1918 pandemic, and there was a significant anti-mask movement then too. So there were prehistoric Karens. And so that's impacting it. And that's politically motivated largely, but the truth is a lot more people are wearing masks now. And now that we have 2 vaccines, probably more coming out, that should make it a lot better as well. If we can get the distribution done correctly, most people predict that we'll be on a very steep downslope in the United States and the world by late summer, early fall, which is phenomenal.
Yes,
But
yes, that would be amazing.
until then, everybody still has to follow the rules, wash your hands, sanitize, safe distancing, and wear your mask. And the last thing I'll say about that is how important masks are. And one of the reasons it's spreading so rapidly is because of air travel. I can't count the number of people who right before Thanksgiving and right before Christmas holidays would come in to get tested the day before they left. And the truth is, it takes about 4 to 5 days to develop a positive test once you're infected. So these people were infected, had a bunch of false negative tests, and hundreds of thousands of people are traveling all over the country irresponsibly thinking that they were negative, even after I explained to them that there's a significant chance it's a false negative. And a lot of people are like, well, I'm young and healthy, I don't care. And it reflects a very selfish attitude.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting what you say about the precautions and washing your hands and using hand sanitizer and wearing your masks. And that brings it to this point here, because I saw on your Instagram, Dr. Fletcher, that you were proving that masks actually work. And what I posted a video, and you were wearing a mask and you lit a lighter to see that if the flame would blow out. And the flame, in fact, did not blow out when you were wearing your mask and you tried to blow the flame out. So I just want to ask you, that, because that was pretty cool to watch. And what inspired you to video this?
That I had people in the emergency department and even friends that sort of said, do they really work? Because there's some misconceptions about it. Like, people think it's supposed to work 100%, and no, it doesn't. And people would still feel their breath come out of the sides, or they would eat like tuna salad and say they can smell it very strongly.
Yeah.
And so they were like, well, they obviously don't work, which is kind of why I did that. Sidebar, I had some people back channel me and say I made it up and I was just making breathing sounds. People who just deny science and reality always astound me. And,
it's amazing.
I'm lying. Or when outgoing President Trump said, every death I pronounce from COVID, I personally pocket $2,000. That, just a complete, utter lie out of nowhere.
Yeah. And, I do feel, there are, like you said, a lot of the younger generation, they feel, well, I'm young, I'm invincible. I can do what I want. I can go down to spring break in Florida. I can go to Mexico. I can, wherever they're going, and it just feels like they're kind of in denial that we are in this, horrific pandemic in our country. And what you said about the safety precautions too, when you did that amazing video, I loved it. I believe it's true. Obviously, I saw it. I could, if you actually watch the video, ladies and gentlemen, who are listening all over the world to the You Gotta Be Bullshilling Me podcast. Again, we got Dr. Brian Fletcher. He is an emergency room physician at a hospital here in Los Angeles, California. And we're talking about COVID-19. And Dr. Fletcher has brought up some really important information firsthand from a first responder and an ER physician who has the knowledge and also the science expertise about the virus. Along from the safety precautions with the mask, do you feel that there are any other safety precautions that are the absolute best? Because I got to tell you, Dr. Fletcher, I wash my hands so many times every single day that it's almost becoming to be not a routine, but it's almost, I feel like it's like an OCD kind of a thing. And it's like I'm washing my hands every time I touch something, or I'm putting hand sanitizer on every time I touch something. I got my mask on every time I go outside. I mean, do you think that there's a psychological aspect that could develop with people with this virus? Or do you think that these safety precautions are really necessary and what we need to be doing to stop this pandemic?
Both. It's sort of like flu deaths and cases of flu have plummeted, and that's because also people are wearing masks. So the truth is, it's probably somewhere in between. There's a pathologic level where people are obsessive about it that I see. But, if everybody kind of washed and sanitized their hands and wore a mask, that would really decrease transmission rates. In fact, where states have done that, it's starkly different in terms of transmission rates, even accounting for population density. So that's still very important. As to whether you're doing it too much or not enough, I feel like it's difficult to answer that question because it's varied from person to person. Some people take it to the extreme on both ways. Some people will just, crack their hands and make them bloody. And there are other people who just refuse to do anything. So I guess the truth is, it's difficult to answer that question, but it's probably, the truth is, and the efficacy is probably somewhere in between. But just so you know, wearing a mask, by the way, has been proven to be about 70 to 75% effective in decreasing transmission. It's more for other people than yourself. A lot of people don't know that. For people who don't wear it, I mean, honestly, it's incredibly selfish. It's a piece of cloth over your face to probably save someone's life. And sometimes I wonder who raised these people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point for sure. Would you advise someone who's on the fence about whether or not to get the vaccine to actually get it? And do you think it's effective?
Yeah, in fact, I tell everyone, even if you're not on the fence, to get it. The studies are very, very clear, and this is kind of what I mean. I get the studies, I get the literature about it. Sure, I'm a little bit biased towards medicine, but again, my knowledge about medicine is greater than your fantasies about how it doesn't work. So the reason, it's a very safe vaccine. Outside of an allergic reaction, there hasn't been, except a handful of any kind of reaction. People think so here's the biggest misconception that I want to clear up right away. And this is true of every vaccine, including the flu vaccine.
Yes.
When someone gets the vaccine shot, a certain amount of people will get a fever, body aches, inflammation, and their first thought is, oh my God, the flu shot gave me the flu, or the COVID shot gave me COVID. That is not true for two reasons. Number one, the flu shot is dead. It is not a zombie virus. The COVID vaccine is not even the virus. It's part of the outer shell.
Okay.
And so when you're building up immunities and your antibodies are being built up, that's what's causing the inflammatory reaction. That's a good sign, believe it or not. In the same way that you get swollen glands when you get like a cold, that's your body's immune system going into overdrive on purpose. So if you get a fever, aches, and pains for a day, that's a good sign. You can take Tylenol and sleep it off. That's a side effect that is, again, good. And it's certainly a lot better than getting COVID.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And speaking about COVID, how many cases have you personally dealt with roughly in the ER at your hospital? And that's part A. And part B is, how do you keep yourself safe and healthy while you're at work? I mean, you're working in, you're an ER physician at a hospital in LA where the pandemic is it's rapidly increasing in the numbers and in the deaths. So, how many cases have you dealt with roughly in terms of the patients that you see who do have COVID? And how do you keep yourself safe when you're treating these patients?
So the answer to the first is easy. Literally hundreds of
Wow.
people come in and out. And that includes all people who are not sick and people who die. So
Wow.
hundreds of people. So I have a pretty good sample. In terms of protecting myself, we're lucky insofar as our hospital and many hospitals in California have enough PPE or personal protective equipment. We have these specialized masks called N95s that are basically a seal around your mouth and nose. We wear face shields and we wear disposable gowns, and we call double gloving. We put on 2 pairs of gloves. And then the rooms in the emergency department are what we call respiratory isolation, which means just for the room itself, all the air in that room gets sucked up into a vent in the ceiling. So like when you open the door, it doesn't come out in the hallway, it goes up into the ceiling. None of these are perfect. We've had a number of nurses, technicians, and doctors catch COVID, but it would be far worse without our protective equipment.
It's kind of how they do it on airplanes too, from what I understand. They blast the air conditioning and everything gets caught up into the filter. But it sounds like, and it's pretty obvious too, with your profession, that you have a pretty stressful job, especially now during this pandemic. And what is it that you enjoy most about being an ER physician?
Well, just to back up a second, it's funny you talk about airplanes. One of my brothers is a pilot.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah. So he talked about the safety measures and how they recirculate the air. And there was a study about it, although it was funded by the air transportation industry. And my thought about it was just, it's so funny because airlines were like, not to brag, but we actually clean the planes now.
Yeah.
Okay. But in terms of emergency medicine, what I like about it is the chance to really make a difference. People come in sometimes in cardiac arrest, and when you see them walk out of the hospital a week later, it really kind of makes you feel good about yourself.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
And in terms of the emergency room, the other thing I like about it is it's one of the few places where patients come in undifferentiated and I get to figure out the problem. So like I'll say, oh, it's appendicitis, it's a gallbladder infection. It's a good problem solving skill. And then sort of the breadth of what I know is sort of like, not to bag on an ophthalmologist, but like, an eye surgeon, like if you fell down in the middle of a forest and broke a leg, an eye surgeon, you might as well be with, an infant.
Right.
I basically know how to sort of start and stabilize pretty much every situation, which is nice because I've had to do it on the street and restaurants multiple times, and even on airplanes 7 times so far.
Wow. I got to tell you, I can feel how genuine your heart is and how much you care about helping people and your knowledge on medicine in general. It's just like you said, being an ER physician too, you have to be able to juggle a lot of different balls because, each patient is coming in for something different and they're going into the operatory or the exam room, and you got to be able to diagnose them, and also be able to treat them. And like you just said, one person can come in for cardiac arrest, another person can come in for COVID, another person can come in for a broken bone, or, whatever it may be. And you have to be able to, on the spot, basically, be able to treat these patients. And that's got to be pretty stressful. But on the same token, it's got to it's kudos to you to be able to handle not just one specialty but many specialties.
Oh, thank you. It's a poorly kept secret, but everyone who works in the ER, we're all kind of adrenaline junkies anyways. So
yeah, that's amazing. So speaking of that, you just said about the ER and your adrenaline junkies. I wanted to ask you too. Are hospitals really like Grey's Anatomy, where you see all the doctors and the nurses hooking up in exam rooms?
There's, yes and no. It's like a lot of the medical stuff they talk about is probably true because they have a lot of medical consults, which I would love to do. But the truth is, a lot of it is Hollywood glamour for people, who otherwise don't understand medicine, and just to sort of make it look good. And, me and my friend, I don't watch medical shows for that reason, because all I do is like, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. I pointed the TV. That doesn't make any sense. And my friends are like, will you just shut up?
Yeah,
Um, but the one thing I will tell you about medicine, because you're in the hospital so many hours every week, that at the risk of sounding indelicate, everybody sleeps with everybody else.
Wow. Yeah, that's I always was curious about that, because you see,
Yeah.
like you said, these medical shows, and I'm like, well, I don't know if they're real or they're not real, and but you hear stories, and it's good to know that everybody's having a good time and also saving people's lives at the same time. Now, if you were not a doctor, what would your second career choice be?
That's a good question. I actually went to law school for 6 weeks before I decided to go to medical school. So they're lawyers aren't all bad. They're very good ones. And so, to help protect your clients is a good thing to do. So my guess would either be that or a professor. I do like to teach a lot. I actually used to teach at NYU Med before
Oh,
I moved
wow.
California, and so I really enjoyed that a lot. But again, if it isn't medicine, I would probably teach, biology or something like that.
Be a
I
professor at a
feel like,
university.
yeah, I kind of feel like being able to serve other people in whatever you do in any kind of profession is kind of a noble thing to do.
Yeah, and it's just I can't. I mean, it's so honorable what you do. Not a lot of people would take on
Oh,
the responsibilities and the job and the tasks that you have on a day-to-day basis around the clock.
thank you.
And I also too, looking at your social media and reading some articles in bios on you from the hospital and your education and your
Yeah,
experience and this, that, and the other. I also noticed too that you are in the LGBTQ community, which I love.
correct.
And I wanted to ask you, at work, especially in a hospital,
Mhm.
um, are you open and out at work, and do you feel that you're accepted and respected?
Absolutely. In fact, I feel like everyone else in the hospital kind of likes that quality, and not for nothing. I think, at least for me, it sort of gives me an edge and a little more empathy, because I kind of know what it's like to be oppressed and marginalized. Because I grew up in the South in the
Okay.
80s as well, which was pretty difficult from an emotional and social standpoint. But yeah, it depends on who you ask. It's 2021. Like, I feel sort of like homophobia is very passe now.
Yes,
And also, because of Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court, it's in every way illegal to discriminate against LGBT persons in the workplace, including for how they even dress, which I thought was pretty amazing. That was in a recent Supreme Court decision by the Trump administration. So yeah, I'm out and proud and loud at work, and I wear my LGBTQ Black Lives Matter pin on my scrubs to let people know that it's a safe space.
that's great.
Um, yeah, and but to be fair, I work right outside of West Hollywood and in a very liberal city, Los Angeles. So it's probably a lot easier to be gay, to be quite frank about it. I have friends who are afraid to be out back in Georgia. So I do count myself lucky / blessed. But I can't think of any homophobia I've overtly experienced in the hospital at all, ever.
That's great. And that's
Yeah,
how it should be. Everybody should
agreed.
be accepted and loved for who they are. And
Well, my CPR is just as good as someone who's straight.
yeah, no, absolutely. And from your mouth to God's ears. And that's a great way to look at it. And again, I sincerely just commend everything that
Oh,
you
thank you
do
for
and
that.
that you are doing. Every show we do discuss two topics,
Okay.
just topics that I think of during the week, and every week and every guest, the topics are different. And the first one that came to mind for me, knowing that you were going to be on our show today, is it just me, or do doctors have the worst penmanship ever? I mean, seriously, like I literally, like, I go to the doctor, and my physician, my primary care physician, he's writing stuff on scripts, on papers, whatever it may be, and it literally looks like a 1-year-old scribbled on paper. Why is your penmanship so awful?
Oh, it's a requirement to get in medical school. When you fill out your applications, they look at your penmanship. No, I'm just kidding. You know, it's a function of two things. Number one, we're just so rushed, and so we kind of scribble. And number two, if you look carefully at what your doctor writes, there's lots of little abbreviations and symbols which are medical, and so it's like a separate alphabet that we use that we can all recognize. And so people are like, well, what is this? And you know, it looks like chicken scratch, but it's code.
Yeah, yeah. And you guys expect the pharmacist to be able to read it too? I mean, do the pharmacists have the same code as the physicians?
They absolutely do. Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, I literally turn in scripts at the pharmacy when I get it from my physician, and I'm like, there's no way in hell that this pharmacist is going to be able to know what prescription he or she is supposed to give me. I mean, I can't even read this. And sure enough, I mean, they've been right on 100% of the time. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
You know, the good news for you and other patients is most of it is done electronically now. Type a few buttons and it goes to the pharmacy that you want.
That's great. I mean, modern technology. So the second topic again is, and I know you're LGBTQ, and that's amazing. You know, it seems like a lot of what's out there now, it's about strip clubs and strippers. How do you feel personally about strip clubs? Because you know, myself personally, I cannot stand them. I think that it's a place where you go and just blow money away, and I feel the strippers just want your money. They give out fake names, fake phone numbers. They stink like horrible perfume. You know, it's just not a place where you will find Brian C. Schilling on the weekends. That's for sure. And I wanted to ask you: have you been to strip clubs? Do you like strip clubs? What are your thoughts about strip clubs?
Well, by definition, you know, it's not my thing. You know what? It's so funny because I have a straight friend, and you know, we had a few adult beverages one night a few years ago. Yeah, he took me to my first straight strip club, and it was definitely an experience. And you know, it was I wouldn't say on a Tuesday night it was their A squad. You know, there were some C-section scars.
Yeah. Amateur night.
But it was interesting. I kind of see it from a different perspective, quite frankly. I mean, it's not my thing. But when I talked to the strippers, 100%. Well, first of all, my friend identified me as gay, so they all wanted to be around me.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
I know. They were like, touch my breasts. And I was like, I really don't want to. And they were like, you'll get a free lap dance. And I was like, Mr. Smithers. I was like, like, you know, that couch is probably covered in dried semen and bed bugs anyway.
Yeah. There's your medical mind thinking.
There you go.
Yeah.
But all of them, every single one of them talked about how for them it was an empowering experience, meaning they're the ones who had the power over the men. They had bodyguards who made sure they didn't get touched, and they all made much more money than otherwise. So I see it.
Right.
I see what you're talking about. By definition, it's sort of misogynistic, but you know, in terms of the strippers or the adult entertainers, they flipped it on their head. They flipped the script, as it were, and they just sort of said, we're the ones with the power and the money, and it's what we choose to do. And they were very embracing of their sexuality. And so as long as there's no touching or looking without consent, I personally don't have a problem with it. You know, it's empowering for the women. They like it. The ones I've seen, again, I have a very small sample. I've been to one strip club.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's great. So how can all of our listeners, Dr. Fletcher, how can they all find you on social media?
Okay, so I have two Instagram accounts. One is a professional one, medical, where I'm happy to post medical stuff and take questions. It's called ER Doc Fletch, ER Doc as in Dr. Fletch, F like Frank, LETCH. My last name is Fletcher. I'm an ER doctor on Instagram. The other one is Fletch Los Angeles, FLETCH Los Angeles. And that's more of a funny social one. Nothing on there is inappropriate. My Instagram stories are borderline, but don't.
That's great.
I put my toe on the line very often, but I don't cross it. And then you can find me on Facebook, Brian Thomas Fletcher in Los Angeles.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love it. And I love you all. Doc, thank you so much again for joining us today. We will definitely have you back on our show down the line. Next week, we have another very special guest. And also, if you would like to be a guest on our show, you can email thinkschilling@gmail.com, and also follow us on all social media @thinkschilling. Until then, pick your nose when you need to. And this is Brian C. Schilling, your host of the You Gotta Be Bullshilling Me podcast. Until then, peace the fuck out. Dr. Fletcher, again, sincerely, thank you so much. I know your schedule is crazy right now, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on our #1 podcast today. And I sincerely hope that we get this COVID-19 virus under control. And enjoy the rest of your day, and stay safe and stay healthy. And thanks again for everything that you do.